Hello and welcome to the Creative Financing Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Gallegos, here with
Jeff Rappaport.
And today, guys, I'm at a coffee shop and we're doing a kind of a conference call here. And if you haven't seen our last episode, what we did is Jeff had a property lead that he has, pretty typical lead. So we ran through the numbers on that. He asked me what I would do. I didn't see the deal before, didn't hear about it prior to the call. So Jeff put me on the spot. And then if you go back and watch that, what you'll figure out is we just kind of worked backwards. So if you haven't watched that, go back and watch that previous episode before you watch this one or before you listen to this one. And now, so we talked about all of the expenses, just to kind of recap here. We talked about all the expenses, and we kind of figured out where our payment needs to be a month to the seller, which is about $1,050, in order to give us $300 in cash flow a month, and be able to cover all of our expenses on the property. And so kind of where we got on that is, the purchase price, I think that the offer I said, Jeff, is the purchase price would be $300. I'd put 25 down and offer them 2% interest. And so that
amortized over 30 years.
Amortized over 30 years, right. So that would put my payment right around that $1,050 mark, or close to it. So that's where I was at on that offer. Now, with that said, that's me coming, out of pocket with more money. And it may not even be that appealing to the seller because we're $25,000 below their asking price, and they're only getting what, like 2% interest. I mean, that might not be that appealing, but
yep.
Who knows? So from here, guys, what we're going to do is Jeff kind of had some other ideas of what we could do to create a couple more offers, right, Jeff?
Yes.
And so that's where we're at. So again, if you haven't listened to that last episode or haven't seen that one, go back and do that so that this one makes sense.
Yeah, this is going to be, I love doing these types of podcasts because I think this is going to be super helpful to our listeners. And it's a little creative, so it's good for me too.
Right.
Okay. One of the things that you mentioned, Jonathan, is that so when we figured out that, hey, what he thinks this property is worth, maybe even what he's asking for this property based on what you can get in rents, that the price is too high. So right. We can approach this in a couple of different ways. One, we can lower the price, but now we've got to try to get the seller on board, right? And for whatever reason, this price is in his head, for right or wrong. It's something that we would have to negotiate. And certainly one of the ways that we can do that is just offer a lower price. However, one of the things that I'm always thinking about is I want you to accept terms. Right. For my cash offer, I'm going to have to come in so significantly less to make this deal work that most likely you're just going to be insulted. You're not even going to respond to my offer. And we're not going to be on the same page, right? I mean,
right.
And I'll tell you what my cash offer is, and to be honest, it probably should be even a little lower.
260.
I think my cash offer was $267 and some change. So they're 50, almost 60,000 less than what they're asking, right?
Yeah.
What are the chances on a free and clear property that he's going to accept that offer?
Very, very slim because the property's in great condition aside from the roof.
Right.
Condition.
And he already thinks in his mind he's discounted the property some. For For the cash offer is a slim to none chance, right? So rather than lowering the price, why don't we figure out a way that we can still offer him either close to the same what he's asking, maybe even more? Can you think of any way that we might be able to do that? Without raising your down payment, because that if you keep raising that down payment, that cash on cash return keeps getting smaller and smaller.
So I don't know, aside from like borrowing money on the property and having the seller subordinate or take second position.
Okay, we'll get to that, but that's good. I'm glad you came up with that.
Okay. So, I mean, aside from that, I'm not sure here.
So what's the monthly payment that we need to stay within?
To the seller, $1,050.
That's like top, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So how about this? What if we offered the seller $325? What if we offered him $335 for the property? And we offered him $1,000 a month or $990 or something like that for 3 to 4 years, principal only.
Okay.
Will that work?
It could. Yeah. So see what that would be. So you said $1,000 a month?
Yep.
Principal only?
Yep.
What was the term?
3 to 4 years. So maybe 3 years at $325, maybe 4 years at $333 or something like that.
Okay.
Okay.
So with this strategy, are you just trying to see if we can get somewhere close to the 80% loan to value at the end of that term so that we could refi out of it? Or
That would be the preference, but at the same time, I really don't know what the value is on this. So I'm trying to get a significant, at least a significant where it's going to make sense to hold this property for the next 3 or 4 years. Like you're going to make a good return on your investment, and at least be in that vicinity, because I haven't really run comps. I personally don't think it's worth 350. Those numbers don't work. To me, it's not worth that. Maybe it's worth 3 to 325, somewhere in that range. But at 300, you'd have to be at 240. I don't think we're getting that low.
no.
At 325, 260-ish, 265. I at least want to make sure that there's going to be some equity at that point.
Okay.
Okay. But could we do that?
Yeah.
We could, right? We could actually offer him his price, maybe even a little bit more.
Yeah. And just doing principal only payments. So we get that, so we're paying down that principal every single month.
Yep.
And then we still have that cash flow. And that's really, if you're the buy and hold guy, if you're holding this as an investment, you want that cash on cash return. Or if you are wholesaling it, you're going to want to give your buyer that cash on cash return.
That's right.
Okay.
And now we can stay at our down payment of around 15, and still give the seller something that would make sense, right?
Okay. So you do 15K down. So you do 325 purchase price.
Yep.
15K down, and then just $1,000 principal payments for 3 years.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Or you could use like the simple interest that I like to use, the kind of the hybrid, at the same kind of thing. The reason that I like it is that principal only payments, I wouldn't say I never use it. I just don't use it often. And there's some issues. One is if the seller was to be audited by the IRS is going to say, no one sells properties at 0% interest. We're going to place an interest rate, and it's actually going to hurt the seller in some way. So if they go and talk to a CPA, they will find that out, that the IRS doesn't like 0% interest. That's to say, I still make those offers on occasion, but not often.
Okay.
What I'd prefer to do is come up with, it's almost the same exact thing that we were just talking about. So my price was $325, $15,000 down, $990 a month payment, 2.5% simple interest. But I didn't like, because the payment's so low compared to the loan balance, it doesn't pay down that much. If your payment is so much lower than what it should be, the principal pay down is not as much as you would like it to be.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you figure this out. And I'm going to help you two different ways, just quickly. So again, if your purchase price is $325 and you're offering $15,000 down, you have a principal balance left of $310,000. If you're working on a financial calculator, you put in $310,000 as your present value. You take the interest rate. I like to use 2.5%, but you could use 2.75, 3.25. 2.5 was based on that at one point it was the lowest federal interest rate, but I haven't really been keeping up with that. So that's just a random number that I like to use.
Okay.
So enter 2.5 as interest in your calculator.
Okay.
Okay, and here's where it gets different than your normal way of figuring out an amortization. This is not amortized. So I'm going to enter in the amount of months that I want this loan. So normally this would be my 36-month loan, but the pay down wasn't good enough. So I extended it to 4 years, 48 months. So put 48 in as N. And now here's the second difference. Normally now you would just solve for payment, and we're not doing that. We decided what the payment is based on what we can afford to pay each month.
Okay, so we plug that in.
So we put $990 and we enter it in as a negative as payment. And now what we solve for is future value. And that comes out to $292,644.
76 cents.
Correct. So you're not getting a huge pay down. You're getting about $18,000 over 4 years. But that's the best I could come up with. And to be honest, now that I'm thinking about it, I probably should have just made a principal only payment. I like that better in this case, because this just doesn't pay down as much as I would like it to. And I could probably offer him a little bit more, maybe try to get his attention with the purchase price.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Oh, by the way, the other way to figure this out is take 310,000 and just multiply it by 0.025. That's about $7,750 a month, or not a month, a year. And
okay, sorry. What? I'm trying to follow you here. What did you do again?
So take the 310,000. That's our principal balance.
Yeah.
Times 0.025.
Right.
That's how much interest that you would pay over the course of a year.
Okay.
7,750.
Right. So we divide that by 12.
90 times 12. We're paying $11,880. So the balance, if you take $11,880 and you minus the $7,750, that's how much money is going toward principal. The reason I like to figure it out the first way is that it will take in the account the pay down after the first year, and will continue to work it that way. But this is an easy way to start seeing, how it works.
Okay.
Okay. So that's one way. So we could have offered principal only payments and come in at that purchase price, or even a little bit higher, depending on how long of a term we'd like to keep it at.
Okay.
That's one way we can get our payment and their price. Here's something that I really like everyone to understand. When we're creating financing, a lot of times it becomes seller's price, my terms. If it's your terms, it's my price. Does that make sense?
Right.
Those are the two kind of the give and take. Now there's more give and take, but that's how I like to look at it.
Okay.
All right. So here's a second option. Okay, so I still want to try to come in somewhere near what they're asking, right? If I want to try to give them close to, sometimes I can't, but I want to try to give them somewhere close to what they're asking, and I want them to accept terms. And so that's the whole reason of why we do that. So in this case, what I like to do is, so I offered them a 4-year term. Now I'm going to offer them a little longer term. And A little counterintuitive because you would think that the longer term would be a higher price, maybe even a higher down payment, maybe even a higher interest rate. But in this case, we already know we can't do that, right? Because our payment will be too high. This deal won't work.
Right.
So what I did is I lowered the price a bit. I came down to 315,000. Not terribly far. I think people that are off asking 325 would still accept 315.
Okay. So 315, and are you putting 15 down or?
20 down in this case.
Okay.
And I am actually, I almost never make this offer, but this is the only way I could figure out how to make this work. So but where are we at? We're at $295,000 note, right?
Yeah.
So what if we offer only interest only?
Interest only. Okay.
So let's take 4% interest.
Let's see, 4%. Okay. Times.
295
Yeah, 295. So that's 11,800 a year.
divided by 12.
Divide that by 12. And that'll put us at 983. So
That works, right?
yeah, kind of right where we want to be.
Now, granted, we're not getting any principal pay down,
Right.
so we want to extend our term because we'll make good cash flow. So we want to make it worth our while for as long as we can. I made it 6 years. I probably should have made it 7, maybe 8.
Okay.
Because aren't we also in that first option that I offered? So if we did principal only, the net is whatever the purchase price was, right?
Yeah.
325, 330, 333. That's what they would net.
Right.
With the way that I did it with the 2.5% interest over the course of 4 years, they netted 355, 164.
Okay.
So additional like $30,000 on top of the purchase price.
Okay.
On this one, they net everything, all the payments,
Yeah.
right? Because there's no principal pay down.
Right.
We're still, because I lowered the price a bit, we're still at about the same payoff as the first option. We'd be at 295 here. It was like 292, 644.
Yeah.
Could you come in a little less interest, 3.5%, maybe make, a little more cash flow, start applying a little bit of that toward your principal pay down? Of course. But the goal here is, how do we think through some of these things? How do we come up with offers that would still work on properties that either are overpriced or just don't fit, the certain criteria?
Yeah. Yeah. Or a scenario where, maybe they had an underlying mortgage and their payment was somewhere around that.
Well, and we talked about this on the last episode. If there was an underlying mortgage, this becomes extremely difficult.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, even if the seller owed 150 grand and their payment was like 850 a month, there wouldn't be much cash flow coming to the seller.
Right.
All right, so let's talk about one last option, and I think that'll be enough to at least get you to start saying, hey, you don't have to use these options on every deal. You don't actually. I rarely use interest only, but hey, sometimes it's needed. I rarely use principal only, but hey, sometimes that's the only way I can structure something. And take it or leave it, Mr. Seller. This is what I can offer, unless you want to talk about a more realistic price.
Yeah. Right. Perfect.
All right. So option 3 was the something that you brought up earlier, which was subordination. And now, again, here's where subordination is great, and here's where it's got some limitations. It really depends on if you're going to borrow money in first position on this property, You got to keep into account, most likely you're borrowing that money at a higher interest rate, even though it's interest only, most likely, that yeah, we still need to stay within that $1,000 a month parameter. That being paying the first, paying the seller's equity in second position, paying two different mortgages. They both have to still total 1,000. If we go over that 1,000, we're defeating the purpose.
Right.
So what do you think that we could offer on a subordination, Jonathan?
Sticking around that, I don't know, that still that same purchase price, 315.
Up to you.
Let's see here. So I guess if we still wanted to keep our payment the same, right?
We got to stay no more than 1,050. That part we know.
Okay.
Can't go above that.
So, and if we were to structure this, would we want to give anything to the seller on top of the first
No.
mortgage?
The whole goal with subordination is, hey, the money that we're going to borrow against the property, you're going to get.
Up front.
That's going to be their down payment. So right now, we were only able to offer $15,000 and $20,000. What if this seller's issue is they need some money to go do something? What can we get them, that might be a little more enticing?
So I'm just off the top of my head, just throwing like 100,000.
How much?
100,000.
100. Okay. What do you think you could borrow $100,000 for?
8%.
8%
interest.
That puts your payment at $666. What's the purchase price that you're going to offer the seller?
Say 315.
315. So you still owe them 215.
Yeah.
How much money can you pay them a month if you're
payment
about 666?
About 300.
300. How are you going to? I mean, $300 a month payment on a $215,000 note is not a lot of money, right?
It doesn't really work, huh?
Well, how do you make it worth your while? I mean, even if you did it principal only, you're getting a $3,600 a year principal pay down. To even get to 10% pay down on this, you'd have to go about 10 years, 8 to 10 years. So let's not go so much money down, because remember, you're paying that, and this is private money. This would be money that you go and find someone that's got money sitting around that they're not getting a great return on, or IRA money, retirement, that kind of stuff, that would love to. I mean, how hard of a loan is this to make? If this property is worth at least $300,000, even at $100,000, they're at 33% loan to value, and they're getting monthly payments, and their money's certainly secured, right?
Right.
So I'm going to come in even less. I came in at $55,000.
Okay, let's see that 55 at 8%.
Yeah. Now, granted, I might be able to find this money at 5 or 6%, which will only help me. But I'm not going into making this offer thinking I'm going to find 6% money.
Yeah.
Because that'll throw my numbers off. I know I can find 8% money.
Okay, so that's so that payment, 55,000, 8% interest, simple interest a year. That would put your payment at 366. To your
55,000 times 0.08 divided by 12.
Right, correct.
Okay, so now we have another $600 to work with, right?
Yeah.
Still not ideal. Maybe $650 if we wanted to. So why not? Now we owe the seller. Let's say that we offered them 3 1/4, the same amount that they're asking. We're giving them $55,000 down. We still owe them $270, but now we do a $600 a month principal only payment. And we do it for 42 months is what I decided. Why? Because I needed enough principal pay down to make it make sense. Could you go longer? Certainly. But how much is the seller netting on this offer?
You said principal only?
Yep.
So he's netting 325.
That's right. So however long you get them to stay in it, whether it's 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 8 years, they're only netting, whenever we have that principal only, they're only netting the amount that we're offering. So this one, I'm trying to figure out a way to keep the term relatively short, at the same time get enough principal pay down to make it worthwhile. Now,
Right.
Granted, if I'm buying this property, I just bought it no money down if they accept this offer.
Right.
So if I don't get as much principal pay down, I didn't put any money down. I got it zero money down. I can go borrow the 55 and the seller's lending me the rest of the money.
Yeah.
So if if I don't have a lot of principal pay down at the end, well, I didn't put any money into it.
Yeah.
If I'm wholesaling it, the only money that I'm looking for my seller to come up with is my wholesale fee.
Right.
So cash on cash return becomes much larger using this kind of thing, this strategy.
It's infinite. If you have no money out of your own pocket, it's an infinite return.
Right. And if you were making now, $350 a month, $4,200 for the year, and you have no money into it, other than you have a roof expense coming up. Let's say that you're going to have 10 grand. That's about a 42% return on your investment. Not bad.
Right. This is what Robert Kiyosaki calls using debt to create money or to create cash flow.
Yeah. So as you see, we came up with actually 3, 4, maybe even more offers on a property that wasn't much of a, it still isn't. It's not like a super good deal. And ultimately, he's asking too much for this property. But we did come up with ways that made it, maybe he's finding out right now that he's asking too much, and he's stubborn and doesn't really want to reduce his purchase price. And we just offered him 3, 4 ways to sell the property with close to, if not what he's asking. Better than he's going to get anywhere else, I would think.
Right. And that is how it's done.
Was that helpful?
Yeah, very. I think for me and for our listeners out there, actually sitting down and running through the numbers and punching numbers into a calculator, and trying to figure out what we could give them down, and then what does that leave us in balance, and then could we give them any additional interest, or do we want it to be principal pay down? Doing that, sitting down, actually running through the numbers, that's how you're going to learn this, and that's how I'm learning this, right? So if you guys are out there wondering, like, man, this is so hard to comprehend, to wrap my head around, pull out a financial calculator, go through the numbers with us as we're punching them in, and it'll begin to make a lot more sense for you guys. And we're going to start doing an offer tutorial screen recording or a screencast, where Jeff's going to actually run through the numbers like this on how he makes offers. And once we start making those, all you guys got to do is watch the video and plug in the numbers into your calculator as he is in his. And we're going to have a calculator on the screen so that you guys can see it in real time as he's punching the numbers in. But yeah, Jeff, absolutely. This is so helpful. And I think it was kind of a fun exercise. So we're going to do a couple more examples here in the near future, just like this. And we'll make recordings like we're doing now, so that you guys can see that. And we'll have a calculator on the screen next time, even if it
can I point out one thing that I think is super crucial in this whole thing? Because otherwise you are just working blindly trying to come up with offers. If you think back, Jonathan, what did we do that has been super helpful to help us figure out how to make these offers?
We figured out what we can pay the seller.
That is
So
correct.
we just worked backwards. We figured out what we can get in rents, and then what we need in cash flow, and then what the expenses are. And then after all of that, we decided from there what we could actually give the seller. And that you have to do that. Otherwise, you're right, Jeff, you're just spinning your wheels here, and you're just throwing mud at the wall trying to see what sticks.
And if you notice, we then structured all the other offers based on within $50 to $100 a month payment. There's not much difference. There's some different offers, different down payment, different purchase price, principal only, interest rate, all that kind of stuff. But one thing stays fairly consistent, and that is the monthly payment
To the seller, yeah.
And if that monthly payment doesn't work, too bad. This deal doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
But we were only able to structure multiple options for the seller based on that we know what we can pay per month.
Right.
Because when we figured out, hey, based on just the purchase price with a reasonable down payment, the monthly payment is going to be $1,400 a month, principal and interest. That wouldn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work. And so what I learned, Jeff, after we were kind of figuring out what that offer would be, playing with the numbers there on the purchase price with 15 down or 25 down, and then just playing with that interest rate, lowering that interest rate till we get our payments right in line. What you came up with then, you said, okay, what if we only did a principal only payment? Or what if we only did an interest only payment? We can make the deal work that way. So that's one thing that I learned by running through this exercise is, okay, if we can't make the payment work by amortizing the loan with, staying being in the deal very light still, less than that 20% loan to value, then let's look to principal only or interest only, and let's stay in it for a period of time where we can make a cash on cash return that is desirable.
Or subordination.
And then we thought about subordination from there, and how we can make that payment work. And so from the subordination, I realized with our imbalance after we give that down payment to the seller, we still have to be able to make the payment work with both loans, number one. And then number two, you gotta still what you're giving to the seller on the second, you still have to make the numbers work on that, either amortized or doing a principal only or an interest only, and then that's how the whole deal comes together, right? So
that's right. And now all of a sudden, on a deal that's marginal at best, and most people would not even show any interest in, we came up with 3 or 4 or 5 different options that we could present. And we don't have to. You could bypass this, but as a wholesaler, what our goal is, hey, we're looking to figure out ways that we can structure deals, we can solve a seller's problem, we can pass it on to a buyer that'll make sense, they can make money on it, and we can get paid in the middle. Is this a super home run deal? No. But it's still workable. And now we've presented these offers. If the seller comes back, maybe they want to negotiate on something, and it's free and clear. The one thing that we can negotiate is we want a lower payment.
Right.
If you want a little more money up front, well, we might be able to figure that out. You're not getting a higher purchase price. That's not happening unless it becomes principal only.
Right.
But we still have some leeway that we can negotiate. Sure. If we can get an $800 a month payment, we could probably offer you a little more money. You can get a little longer term, we could probably offer you a little more money. all these different variables. The goal is hey, let's have a conversation, see if we can work this out.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to make a point here that you can do these kind of deals in this market when the market's hot and properties are flying off the shelf, especially if, you know, if you're in a hot market like we are, Jeff, or California or wherever. You can do these deals now, and then I guarantee when the market changes, when the market shifts and properties are harder to sell, there's going to be a lot more sellers out there that that these kind of deals, these kind of offers will only work for because of what they owe on it. They might be underwater, but you can make, if you can make a cash on cash return on these properties, you can put a deal together.
Yep.
And so I just wanted to point that out. So you can do these deals in this market, and then when the market shifts, you will be prepared to make a lot of money, because there's not, I mean, the competition out there are just throwing, I mean, right now, mostly they're just throwing cash offers out there, or they're just trying to take over existing debt on a property. And there's nothing really creative about it. And what we just ran through here, it's creative, and it's finding a way to make the deal work.
I promise you, we have no competition on this particular.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is a great example of a deal that all of your competitors would pass on.
Yeah.
And you would be able to make an offer.
Yeah. I don't know if we'll get this. We made an offer. I don't even know if I really want it. We'll see. But I just know that this seller doesn't have as many alternatives as some of the others that we deal with. And I love that. And you are exactly right. Creative financing works now. Absolutely works now. I mean, right now, I think we currently have 2 deals, owner financing, that we're selling, and we'll actually go, and we just sold 2. And the next example, I'll show you one that we just sold, and kind of similar to this, not much of a deal, that we made a deal and already sold and made some money on. And then the third one that we'll talk about is a house that we actually just put under contract, and a couple little issues with it, but I think the owner financing part will overcome those issues. And so by the time that we do that, hopefully I have a buyer and we will have closed, and you'll like them, because these are deals that the next one's a listed property, and the one after that actually was listed, and she could sell it on her own. And we paid both of them pretty close, if not more, than what they were asking.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, guys. Hope that wasn't too confusing for you. And
awesome.
It was awesome for me. I learned a lot. And if you guys are able to sit down and run the numbers, you'll learn a lot as well. So with that aside, guys, if you want to reach us, if you have questions, comments, we want to be able to answer your guys' questions. And so if you're confused about a certain strategy, a certain method, how to structure something, give us a call on our hotline, leave us a message, and we'll either call you back personally, or we'll get your question on the show, and we'll answer it. Our number is 877-409-8090. Again, that's 877-409-8090. You can find all of our podcasts at thecreativefinancingpodcast.com. We're also on Facebook at the Creative Financing Podcast, and we have a YouTube channel that we started called the Creative Financing Show. So we're in all those places. Please leave us a comment, review. We want to continue to grow this so we can add value to you guys. Any last words, Jeff?
I'm looking to work with people all over the country. I have a couple of apprentice programs. If you're interested, I'm happy to chat with you. We'll work on some different kinds of deals together. You'll like it. Just call in the hotline, let me know that you're interested, and I'll reach out to you.
Perfect. Okay, guys. Until next time, create some terms.